Part 19. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 181. Xuanhuan was filled with shame and anger at this time. As soon as she walked out of Yeding Palace, blushes appeared on her face. She had tried her best to control her emotions just now, but she still couldn't help but blush and her heart beat faster. What a foolish king! Ji Hongyi muttered secretly. She didn't dare to recall what she saw. She couldn't help but touch her hot cheek, and her heart was beating even harder. Sigh, there will definitely be more of this kind of thing in the future, and it may even happen to me. Xuanhuan sighed, feeling confused and hesitant about her future destiny. Sister in red. Sister in red. Suddenly, a crisp sound came into my ears, and then, a girl in a pink skirt came from a distance, with graceful steps and pink feet. Seeing this, Ji Hongyi nodded slightly and said, "It turns out to be Sister Yan'er. Why are you here?" "Hee, I'm here to play with Sister Hong." "Sister Hong, don't forget what we agreed." The girl in the pink skirt smiled sweetly and said, "You said we should take a shower together. Of course I won't break your promise." Xuanhuan smiled softly. After she came to Chang'an City, the first girl she met was Yun Yan'er in front of her. The other party has a warm and kind personality, and they are very compatible with her. The two gradually become familiar with each other and have a close relationship. The two women had agreed to take a bath together when they had time. However, she had already forgotten this matter, but she didn't expect that Yun Yan'er would always remember it. "Hee, Sister in red is the best." Yun Yan'er showed a sly smile, then approached Xuanhuan and asked in a low voice. "Sister in red, did you have that just now?" Yun Yan'er's face turned red and her voice sounded like a mosquito. Ji Hongyi was stunned for a moment, a little confused. "Which one?" Yun Yan'er's face turned even redder when she heard this, and she hesitated and said, it's, Her face was hot, and she seemed to find it difficult to speak at the end. Seeing Yun Yan'er's coy look, Xuanhuan was even more confused. What on earth? What happened? Yun Yan'er's face turned red, she hesitated for a moment, and finally spoke in a low voice. "That's it, that one." After saying this, Yun Yan'er gestured with her hands, then whispered softly into Ji Hongyi's ear. "Ah!" Hearing Yun Yan'er's words, Xuanhuan was stunned for a moment, then reacted, her face instantly turned red, and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated. "Hong, Sister in red, you." Seeing that Hongyi didn't reply for a long time, Yun Yan'er looked up and was startled by the sight. She only felt that Xuanhuan's face was so red that it seemed to bleed, so charming and alluring. That cute look is even more adorable. It is completely opposite to her usual majestic empress look. She is completely different from the other person. It is a huge contrast. Yun Yan'er, who is also a woman, also felt short of breath and swaying. You, why do you ask these random questions?" Ji Hongyi's face turned red and she wished she could leave Yun Yan'er immediately. "Oh, Sister in red, don't be shy, you will have to go through this sooner or later." Seeing that Hongyi refused to answer, Yun Yan'er simply leaned close to Xuanhuan, pulled her arm and said coquettishly. Xuanhuan's face turned redder and redder, feeling shy and panicked. Her complexion became more and more delicate, as bright as an alluring peach. She closed her eyes slightly and said in an extremely weak voice, When Yun Yan'er heard Xuanhuan's answer, a strange smile suddenly appeared on her face. She reached out and hugged Xuanhuan and said with a smile, "Then let's go to the hot springs together." Xuanhuan was caught off guard and was hugged into his arms. Her delicate body was stiff and goosebumps appeared all over her body. She was shocked, and subconsciously pushed Yun Yan'er away. "No." Yun Yan'er blinked. "Why?" Your Majesty only gave me half the time to burn the incense. Now it has been delayed for a long time. I must go back immediately. Xuanhuan took a few deep breaths, tried to calm down her emotions, and said calmly, "You go back first, and we can soak in the hot spring together another day." He, Sister in Red, Your Majesty has promised me to allow you to go to the hot springs with me. Xuanhuan covered her lips and snickered. This time it was Xuanhuan's turn to be surprised. Really? Then, did Your Majesty really say that? Of course it's true. Xuanhuan nodded. I will not mishear the order given by His Majesty himself. But Xuanhuan still had some hesitation in his heart. Since she came to Chang'an City, she has been obedient and tried not to make any mistakes, lest Qin Mu find reasons to punish her. And if Qin Mu is offended by going out without authorization, the consequences will be absolutely disastrous. Seeing that Hong Yi had been standing there without moving, Xuanhuan urged, Sister Hong Yi, don't worry, nothing will happen. Do you still want to go back and watch His Majesty eat dumplings? Xuanhuan shook her head subconsciously, no, I don't want to. Seeing this, Xuanhuan smiled playfully and said, that's all right. Since you don't want to go back, just come with me. Let's go to the hot springs. After saying that, she took Xuanhuan's little hand and walked towards the hot spring pool in the palace. With half-hearted reluctance, Xuanhuan and Xuanhuan entered the hot spring pool deep in the palace. This hot spring pool covers a vast area of more than 100 acres, and is filled with mist, like a fairyland. There is a spiritual spring flowing in the pool, with a strange fragrance that is refreshing. Around the pool are all kinds of precious flowers and plants, colorful and fragrant. The petals fell into the water, causing the pool water to ripple. Sister Hong Ai, look, what is that? Xuanhuan suddenly pointed to the other side of the hot spring pool and said with a smile. Xuanhuan followed Xuanhuan's gaze and saw that the rocks by the pool were filled with all kinds of fruits and cakes. In addition, there were 2 sets of white gauze bathrobes. Sister Hong Ai, help me change. Xuanhuan pulled Ji Hong Ai, stuffed one of the white gauze bathrobes into her arms, and took off the cumbersome palace clothes on her body. I will help you put it on. Ji Hong Ai was stunned for a second before she reacted, her pretty face redder. Yeah. Xuanhuan nodded without hesitation. Ji Hong Ai hesitated for a while, and finally reached out and helped Xuanhuan put on the clothes a little clumsily. After all, this was the first time she did this kind of thing. Soon, Xuanhuan picked up another white gauze bathrobe after changing, and turned to look at Ji Hong Ai. Sister Hong Ai, come, I will help you change. No. Ji Hong Ai waved her hand and refused. Xuanhuan smiled and rushed over, pulling Ji Hong Ai's collar. You're welcome. Soon, both of them bathed in the cool and comfortable hot spring. It is true. The red dress turns into waves at will, and the clouds and smoke turn into bridges at will. The jade face goes nowhere, and a touch of red smoke intoxicates the world. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 182. Xuanhuan leaned against the shore, lazily stretching her jade arms, revealing her snow-white slender thighs, which were flawless and beautiful. Xuanhuan sat opposite her, holding her knees with her hands, silently looking at Xuanhuan, her eyes twinkling slightly. The two were several meters apart and could see each other's expressions. It's so comfortable, Sister Hong Ai, have you ever taken a bath with another woman before? Xuanhuan picked up a clear spring with her hands and poured it gently on her collarbone. The clear spring water slowly flowed downwards along her fair and tender skin. A pair of big bright eyes looked at her. No. Ji Hong Ai lowered his head slightly and replied with a hint of embarrassment. Suddenly, Xuanhuan immersed herself in the water, swam over, looked up at Xuanhuan, and said with a smile. Sister in red, you have such a good figure, and your skin is so smooth. Her cheeks were flushed, and her beautiful eyes were watery as she looked at Xuanhuan's skin with envy. You, don't talk nonsense. Hearing Xuanhuan's teasing, Xuanhuan's pretty face flushed, and she glared at her angrily, but couldn't help but look down at her chest. I can't see my feet. With such a figure, it should be considered pretty good, right? Xuanhuan thought. At this time, a bright smile appeared on Xuanhuan's lips, and she suddenly came forward, hugged Xuanhuan's neck, and said softly, Sister in red, today I will teach you a way to ensure that your majesty will be fascinated. Xuanhuan was stunned when he heard this, and then quickly said, No. No need, I think. Don't be shy. This matter is related to my sister's future life. You must not take it lightly. Xuanhuan forcibly dragged Xuanhuan closer to the edge of the hot spring. Soon, her two bodies fit tightly together. A faint fragrance penetrated into his nostrils, and Xuanhuan suddenly felt a roar in his mind, his ears felt hot, his breathing became short, and he struggled subconsciously. Although Xuanhuan is relatively young, she is a mature and charming beauty. Coupled with Qin Mu's hard work on her during this period, her body has changed tremendously. Moreover, Xuanhuan was born to be as beautiful as a fairy, with skin as good as snow. Coupled with the unique girlish fragrance exuding from her body, she looked even more charming and alluring. For a time, Xuanhuan's heart was beating wildly, and there was an inexplicable feeling in her heart. How so? She secretly gritted her teeth and forcibly suppressed the impulse. But gradually, the strength in her body seemed to be drained away, and she finally collapsed by the pool. A quarter of an hour later. Sister Hong-ai, are you tired? Let's take a rest. Xuanhuan said softly, stretched out her slender hands and put them on Xuanhuan's waist, taking her whole body into her arms. For a moment, Xuanhuan's whole body stiffened. This goblin. Feeling the touch on his forehead, Xuanhuan cursed secretly in his heart. She was still worried that Xuanhuan was too innocent and would be bullied by the foolish king. It's better now. He almost lost his armor at Xuanhuan's place. It's just her. The more Xuanhuan thought about it, the more regretful she became. If I had known that this girl was so shameless, I should have stayed away from her in the first place. Sister in red. Xuanhuan lay next to Xuanhuan's ear and whispered softly, exhaling like blue. Her voice became more and more charming, as if it had some kind of magic power. Xuanhuan didn't dare to open her eyes, her eyelashes trembled slightly, and she asked softly, What do you want to do? Sister in red, let's have a chat. Xuanhuan blinked her beautiful eyes, a cunning look appeared on her pretty face. Well. Xuanhuan was speechless and at a loss. After a moment, she sighed softly and said helplessly, Whatever you want to talk about, just say it. Sister in red, do you know what kind of woman His Majesty likes? Xuanhuan raised her eyes and stared at Xuanhuan, her big eyes flickering, and asked seriously. Well, I don't know. Xuanhuan frowned slightly and shook his head. How does she know what kind of woman that foolish king likes, and even if she knows, what does it have to do with her? Even if she drowned here today, she wouldn't be able to change herself in order to cater to that foolish king. Absolutely impossible. Sister Hong-ai, since you don't know, let me tell you. Xuanhuan smiled playfully, lowered her head suddenly, placed it next to her ear, and whispered in a low voice. Your Majesty likes all women who are good-looking. Xuanhuan. The corners of her mouth twitched, Your Majesty is really. Xuanhuan was speechless for a moment. She didn't know how to comment on Qin Mu's behavior. This is really hard to comment on. Xuanhuan pursed her lips and smiled, and added, Yes, His Majesty is such a dedicated man. Xuanhuan. Yunyaner moved closer to Xuanhuan and continued. However, although everyone has their own beauty, there are still slight differences in other aspects. Sister in red, I can guide you so that you can become more pleasing to His Majesty. Xuanhuan was silent for a while. After a moment, he spoke. No need, I just hope to spend this period quietly. If your Majesty really needs it, then I. Before she could finish speaking, Yunyaner suddenly stood up from the water, put her hands on Xuanhuan's shoulders, and pulled her up from the water. She walked towards the stone platform and continued. Sister in red, this kind of thing can't be taken carelessly. It must be taken seriously. There are so many concubines in the palace. If you don't have your own characteristics, His Majesty will soon forget you. Xuanhuan still shook her head, lowered her eyes slightly, and said softly, Sister Yun, please let me go. This kind of thing is not suitable for me. Yunyaner did not let go of her, but held her tighter and insisted. Sister Hong'ai, believe me, as long as you capture His Majesty's heart, your Kangyu dynasty will also get more benefits in the future. You've come anyway, so are you paying for it in vain? At this point, she stopped and turned to look at Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan was slightly startled, and then fell into deep thought, his thoughts changing all over the place. Yes, she's already here, wouldn't it be a big loss if she just paid for it in vain? Yunyaner was delighted when she saw this and hurriedly struck while the iron was hot. Sister in red, you must use your advantages now to get more benefits for yourself. Otherwise, it will be too late if you try to fight for them when the advantages are gone in the future. You are the Empress, so you must know the choice better than me. You only have one chance, if you fail, you're gone. Yunyaner said with a serious expression. Sure enough. Hearing Yunyaner's words, Ji Hong'ai's expression slightly condensed, his eyes were as deep as a pool, and his mind surged violently. After a long time, she slowly closed her eyes, her long eyelashes trembled, and murmured softly. What should I do? Yunyaner smiled slightly, moved closer to understand Hongyi, put her two slender jade arms on Xie Hongyi's round shoulders, and whispered in her ear. It's very simple. It's actually just 2 words. Ji Hong'ai blinked her eyes and looked at Yunyaner doubtfully. She really couldn't guess which words they were. Yunyaner smiled sweetly, her voice soft and sweet, like the spring breeze blowing. Contrast. As night falls, the moonlight hangs high like a silver plate. Qin Mu walked out of Yeding Palace with satisfaction. He was very busy today. Ye Jinghong was very excited when he saw her mother and her 7th and 9th sisters. Qin Mu, who has always been kind and generous, made them a large pot of steaming dumplings to celebrate the reunion of the 4 of them. Especially Ye Jinghong, because she was new here, Qin Mu took special care of her. All the women were so full that they lay on the ground and didn't even want to move a finger. This is undoubtedly a recognition of Qin Mu's cooking skills. Qin Mu was in a good mood and walked towards Vyang Palace. Not long after, he arrived outside Vyang Palace. As soon as he walked into the palace gate, Qin Mu was immediately shocked by the scene in front of him. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future Empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 183. The lights were brightly lit in the huge sleeping hall. A peerless beauty was sitting on a soft couch with her back against the phoenix bed, holding an ancient book and relishing it. Her skin was as radiant as snow, her face was astonishing, and her glossy black hair was spread over her shoulders. A red tulle skirt trailed to the floor, highlighting her slim and graceful figure. She has a slender figure and her skin is as clear as snow. With an oval face and perfect facial features, she is extremely beautiful. Especially those narrow and charming peach blossom eyes, which seem to be able to enchant the soul when looking forward to them. Her beauty is no less beautiful than Ye Jinghong, Shen Yaoxi, Yun Yan'er and others, even more so. But what attracted Qin Mu most was not her beauty, but her temperament. Cold, aloof, indifferent, like a fairy who can't eat the fireworks of the world, but at the same time, he is majestic and noble like an emperor. Every move seems to be looking down on all living beings, which is intimidating. The whole scene reveals a powerful aura, so domineering and suffocating. This is a complex of contradictions, but it blends together just right. At this moment, she was lying on her side on the soft couch, her slender and white right leg resting on the soft couch, and her left leg curled up and crossed. A jade foot is looming in the red skirt, and a jade foot is exposed, crystal clear like white jade carvings, exuding gleaming light. The crystal clear jade toes are sometimes curled up, sometimes slightly raised, and even the spaces between the toes are glowing with an attractive pearl scent pink color, making people move their index fingers at just one glance. She supported her head with one hand, leaning lazily on the soft couch, while reading a book in her other hand. Maybe he was tired of looking at it, so he picked up the bronze flask with his delicate hands, poured a glass of wine and drank it. Her movements were leisurely and lazy, exuding a seductive charm. Every move is rhythmic and elegant. Qin Mu looked at this picture and couldn't move his eyes away for a moment. She seemed to have noticed something, and slowly raised her head. In an instant, the two eyes collided. The air seemed to freeze instantly, and the silence around you could be heard. When Ji Hong'ai saw that it was Qin Mu, a complicated expression flashed across her beautiful eyes, which eventually turned into calm and calm. "You're here, what's the matter?" Her tone was slightly raised, with a calm indifference, and her voice was light and sweet, like a clear spring cutting through a long river. Then he withdrew his gaze and continued to look at the book in his hand. Qin Mu was stunned. He even wondered if he had gone to the wrong place. Wasn't this his palace? Why does it seem like he is the outsider? Qin Mu was a little confused. Just now Xie Hong'ai looked very obedient. Why did he become a completely different person after a while? No. When something goes wrong, there must be a monster. Xie Hong'ai is currently in Chang'an City, so she shouldn't have the guts to make such a gesture. Maybe the other party is role-playing? Seeing this, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows slightly, curved the corners of his lips, narrowed his eyes slightly, and said with a smile, "I made a meal of dumplings today and brought them to your majesty to try." Qin Mu no longer calls himself I, and even calls Xie Hong'ai your majesty. He has obviously fallen into his role. "Yeah, I'm interested." Xie Hong'ai nodded and replied lightly without looking back. When Qin Mu saw Hong Yi's attitude, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he resisted the urge to slap her butt. He walked slowly and came straight to her. Xie Hong'ai still maintained her original posture without turning her head. "Your Majesty seems a little depressed today, but what troubles have you encountered? If you need your help, just ask me." Qin Mu asked with concern after standing still. "It has nothing to do with you, just step back." However, Xie Hong'ai still didn't react at all, and didn't even look at him. When Qin Mu saw this, an evil smile appeared on his lips. He stretched out his slender jade-like palm and grabbed Xie Hong'ai's wrist. "Your Majesty is feeling uneasy today. Could it be that he is suffering from an illness?" Xie Hong'ai frowned slightly and seemed to want to break away. Feeling the warm and greasy touch in his palm, Qin Mu's heart began to stir slightly, and his palm became harder and harder. Ji Hong'ai's pretty face sank slightly, and she scolded coldly. "How presumptuous! Who allowed you to touch me? Don't you want to live anymore? Let go." Listening to Xie Hong'ai's cold and biting words, Qin Mu not only did not let go, but tightened his grip and said with a smile. It turns out that your majesty, all your cultivation has disappeared, and now you can't even break free with this little strength. When Xuanhuan heard this, she was slightly startled, and then she seemed to realize something, with a just right look of panic on her face. What are you talking about? I'm just afraid of hurting you by using my power. With my power in the cave void realm, isn't it easy to break free? Qin Mu had a smile on his lips and said with a low smile, "Oh? Really?" Ji Hongii scolded, "Stop talking nonsense and let go of me quickly, otherwise don't blame me for being ruthless." Qin Mu narrowed his eyes, suddenly approached her delicate and beautiful face, and said softly, "Your Majesty, stop pretending. You don't want outsiders to know about this, right?" Xuanhui's cheeks suddenly changed color, and anger flashed in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" Qin Mu's smile became even brighter, and a sea of bright stars was reflected in his dark and deep pupils. "In this case, Your Majesty, please don't blame me for my loyalty deteriorating." Ji Hongii heard this, and a look of disgust appeared on her face. "Don't be so presumptuous, get out." Qin Mu was not annoyed when he heard this, but moved closer again. "Your Majesty, let me help you recover your cultivation." The moon was hidden and the stars were falling, and the night was getting deeper. Outside Chang'an City, a silver arc of light passed through the sky, as fast as lightning, and arrived in an instant. Soon, a small silver-white figure fell to the ground at a rapid speed. It was a little fox with a white body. She blinked her watery almond eyes and scanned the surroundings several times. After confirming that there was no danger, she hid her body. It looked at Chang'an City not far away, carefully looking at the majestic and magnificent Chang'an City wall, with a solemn look in its eyes. "Is this Chang'an City? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 184. The little fox muttered to himself, and then walked towards Chang'an City with light steps. It was not in a hurry to enter the city, but walked around Chang'an City at a very fast speed. The more it observed, the more confused it became. It seems that there is nothing special. This Chang'an City looks ordinary, no different from other dynasty cities. But it may be that there are secrets inside, or maybe the defense formation here is too advanced, and I can't tell it with my strength. It muttered inwardly. On the way here, it had heard about the killing of several saints outside Chang'an City, but after personally investigating it, it found that there was nothing special. Even the guards here are very common, and their strictness is not even better than that of a small city. Of course, this may be because no one dares to act wild in Chang'an City, so there is no need for so many guards. Forget it, let's go into the city first and find a crowded place to inquire about the situation. The little fox thought, and then tilted his head. Then, a golden light suddenly flashed out, and turned into a handsome young man. He wore a gorgeous brocade robe, a purple gold crown with a jewel on his head, and a green and white jade belt around his waist. His facial features were delicate and elegant, especially his eyes, which were narrow and charming, full of charm. He didn't look like a man at all, but he was indeed a man in his dress. If Qin Mu saw this person now, he would definitely exclaim, "Oh, where did this little boy come from?" The young man smiled between his eyebrows, his eyes were as bright as a lamp, and his every move was full of noble aura, like a banished immortal. And this unique temperament came from his innate charm. Well, it's really comfortable to look like a man. It will save a lot of trouble to travel around the world like this. After looking at his appearance, he nodded secretly and then walked forward. His steps were light and slow, as if he was strolling in a garden, neither hurried nor slow, but each step seemed to cover a short distance. The young man walked to the city gate, and the soldiers in charge of checking him saw that he was extraordinary and dignified, and they all respectfully made way for him. Seeing this, the young man raised his lips slightly and glanced at them casually. Then, he raised his legs and continued to walk forward. His posture was extraordinary, and his back was full of indescribable elegance and dignity. There was no dust under his feet, as if he was the only one in the world. At this time, two soldiers happened to be changing shifts. One of the soldiers looked at the back of the young man leaving and asked in confusion, "Eh? Why does this man look like a woman?" Another soldier shook his head and said, "You don't understand this, right? Nowadays, many powerful people like to play with male favorites. I'm used to this trick and it's not surprising at all. So that's why this man is so beautiful. I'm so envious. He can get the favor of those powerful people. I guess he won't have to struggle for the rest of his life." The first soldier smacked his lips and said with some envy. Then he couldn't help but sigh and complain to his companion, "It's so hard for us to be on duty here, and we have to beware of demons and monsters." "Alas." "Yes." The companion also echoed. The young man who hadn't walked far away naturally heard the conversation between the two soldiers. His mouth twitched slightly, and his pace suddenly quickened, and he disappeared into the night in an instant. Although it was night at this time, the city of Chang'an was still brightly lit, bustling and prosperous, just like daytime. There are many shops and restaurants on both sides of the street. I am really angry. Is the human world so fancy? The boy bit his silver teeth in his heart, full of confusion and anger. He originally thought that if he became a man, he could save a lot of trouble. But he didn't expect that humans nowadays are so fancy. If he wasn't afraid of exposing himself, he would definitely kill those two humans. Two ignorant guys dared to say that he was a human male pet? Abba! Are humans worthy of being his master? Ha! The boy sneered. Then he sorted out his mood and looked up to carefully observe this human city. The most eye-catching thing in the city is not the shops on both sides of the street, but the magnificent building suspended in the air that seems to have not been completed yet. At this moment, the giant palace is still under intense construction, and countless craftsmen are busy piling up precious materials on the platform. Each of these materials is expensive and contains magnificent spiritual energy. So that the whole palace has not been completed, but it is already full of rosy clouds and ethereal air, with the beginning of the atmosphere of the immortals. What a luxury! Seeing the appearance of the giant palace, the boy's pupils shrank slightly and he cursed. He could naturally see how rare these materials were. Not to mention the value of the rare materials themselves, just the fusion between them and various auxiliary functions are difficult to measure. It is no exaggeration to say that anyone who takes a piece and puts it into the alchemy furnace can refine a top-level elixir or a top-level weapon. What's more, there are so many here, which is simply an endless wealth. If we use the words of the human world, this palace is a moving gold mountain. Such a moving gold mountain was actually used to build a huge palace. It was really extravagant. Such precious materials were actually built on the palace. What a waste! The young man gritted his teeth, wishing he could smash the palace with a slap and then take all the things back to the demon clan. The human world is really rotten. He snorted in his heart. Then, he looked around and his eyes fell on a huge palace. It was the core of Chang'an City, the residence of the emperor, and his goal this time, the palace. But, how can I get in? The young man's eyes flickered slightly. He could easily sneak into Chang'an City, but the palace must be heavily guarded. He didn't think he could sneak in quietly. After all, it was the palace, and there were many powerful beings hidden in it. If he rushed in rashly, he would inevitably get into trouble. But there is no rush for this matter. Let's check other situations first. The young man murmured in his heart, then turned around and walked towards other directions of Chang'an City. He shuttled among the crowd, walked on the street, and looked at the various snacks on the roadside stalls from time to time. This is the busiest street in Chang'an City, and all kinds of delicious snacks are placed on the whole street. The boy sniffed with his nose, and his eyes flashed. He stopped in front of a small stall and smacked his lips lightly. In his heart, he snorted with disdain, humans are really not doing their jobs, they only know how to enjoy themselves, and sooner or later they will be ruled by our demons. I saw a boss sitting busy at the stall. There were 5 or 6 dishes on the table, a stove, an iron pot rack, and a spoon. When the boss saw a customer coming, he immediately came over enthusiastically, with a smile on his face, and asked, "Hello, sir, what do you need?" The boy glanced at the food on the table and swallowed lightly in his throat. Damn it! Humans can enjoy it, so can't I enjoy it? The boy frowned slightly, pondered for a moment, and then said lightly, "Just bring me some food." "Okay, wait a moment." The boss nodded, and quickly brought the dishes to the boy's table. The boy picked up a piece of meat, blew it gently, and put it in his mouth to chew. It was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, and it was very delicious. The meat was thick but soft and delicious. The boy narrowed his eyes slightly, showing satisfaction, and praised, "Good skills." "Hee, thank you for the compliment." The boss smiled. After the boy finished eating, he was ready to get up and leave. The boss blinked, looking confused, and hurriedly stopped him. "This young man, you haven't paid yet." The boy was stunned when he heard this, and said blankly, "What is paying?" The boss. "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 185. The boss shook his head and said earnestly, "I see you are dressed in luxurious clothes, you must be rich or noble, you should have enough food and drink, how can you not even understand this most basic rule?" The boy blinked. "What rules?" The boss frowned, his eyes suddenly became fierce. "Sir, do you want to eat a free meal? I advise you to give up this idea, this is Chang'an City." The boy blinked again. "What is a free meal?" The boss was stunned, seemed to understand something, and looked at him with pity. "Sir, you don't even know what paying is." The boy seemed to finally react and suddenly realized, "Oh, you mean paying." The boss sighed in his heart, thinking that he finally made it clear, and he didn't know where this stupid boy came from, but he didn't even understand this. However, the boy spread his hands, stood there quietly, and said lightly, "No money." He didn't have any human coins, and with his status in the Fox clan, he never had to pay for food. Even if he went to other places of the demon clan, he would do whatever he wanted. In his long and distant years, there was no such thing as paying. Boss. Then do you have anything else to mortgage? The boss frowned. The boy shook his head, "No." The boss opened his mouth to say something, but when he saw the boy's clear and stupid eyes, he was speechless. "Forget it, I'll just consider this order a loss, you can go." The boss sighed and shook his head. "Okay." The boy nodded, without any guilt, and no intention of expressing gratitude. After speaking, he turned around and walked away. Boss. The last time he was so speechless was the last time. He suddenly regretted being so kind. He should have let this guy pay the money before letting him go. However, the next second, the boss was suddenly surprised. He saw that the boy had originally walked away, but suddenly stopped, turned around and walked back. The boy stared at the other delicacies on the stall, eating and taking until his hands were almost full, and then he left with satisfaction. Boss. The boss was stunned, staring at the boy who was leaving with his eyes fixed, and the corners of his mouth twitched violently. Where did this weird thing come from? The boss wanted to cry but had no tears, and was extremely heartbroken. He had never seen such a shameless person. The boy who left was still tasting the food in his mouth, his cheeks were stuffed, and he couldn't help but smile happily when he felt the explosion of the food in his taste buds. He was so happy that his narrow and bright eyes narrowed slightly. Human beings always like to pursue pleasure, which is so superficial. The boy snorted in his heart, very disdainful. But, human food is really delicious. The boy couldn't help licking his lips. It's much better than the food made by those foxes. But that stupid human actually wanted me to pay, and even dared to covet the treasures on my body. Stupid human, it's your honor to be able to make food for me. The boy thought secretly in his heart, his handsome face slightly raised, with a proud attitude. Then he focused on the grilled fish in his hand and took a bite. The boy continued to walk forward and soon left here and went to the next street. The prosperity of Chang'an City is far beyond imagination. Even when night falls, there are still a lot of cars and people, and the flow is endless, like a huge red river, stretching across the sky. Countless monks are flying over the eaves and walls, flying in the air, riding monsters or riding spiritual instruments and flying magic weapons, shuttling in Chang'an City. They gathered in this huge city, looking for the opportunities and fortunes they can find. Everything shows the prosperity of the human race. However, these cultivators are only flying at low altitude, no more than 3 meters above the ground. Because Chang'an City's airband formation only allows 3 meters above the ground. Whether it is a high official in the court or a prince, all must follow this rule. The young man strolled slowly along the street, occasionally looking up, and saw a row of restaurants, bright lights, and constant noise. The human city is indeed prosperous and lively, much better than the holy land of the demon race, Xuanhuan City. The young man stood on the crowded street and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The demon race is definitely one of the top tribes in the world. But the area where the demon race lives is different from that of humans. In comparison, the living environment of the demon race is very bad, and the large number of various tribes leads to a serious shortage of various resources, thin spiritual energy, and extremely slow cultivation speed. It can't be compared with the living environment of humans at all. If the demon race's physique is not strong enough, it will be difficult to gain a foothold in this world. But even though the demons are extremely strong, they are far inferior to humans in terms of wisdom. Except for a few demons with great luck and the descendants of powerful demons. Most ordinary demons rely on stimulating blood inheritance or devouring natural treasures to grow. The growth process of these demons is very slow, and it takes only a few hundred years to grow. To have human wisdom, it takes thousands or even tens of thousands of years of evolution. Although humans are physically weak, they are born with the wisdom that ordinary monsters can only acquire after hundreds of years of hard work. Moreover, humans are naturally close to the Tao and are favored by the Tao. They can be said to be the most suitable creatures for cultivation in the myriad worlds. If it weren't for the short lifespan of humans, they would have replaced the status of monsters long ago. This is the difference between humans and monsters. The young man was immersed in his own world and had unknowingly walked to the vicinity of the palace. He looked up and looked at the majestic gate of the palace, his eyes gradually widened. This is a magnificent palace. It occupies half of Chang'an City, surrounded by a circle of towering buildings. Every 5 or 6 meters, there is a tall tower, emitting a light golden light, covering the entire palace. In the golden light, the palace is more magnificent and magnificent, revealing a suffocating pressure, as if a prehistoric beast is dormant in the dark night. This is where the emperor of the Qin dynasty lives, the peak of the power of the Qin dynasty, and the core of the entire Qin dynasty. Tisk, this place is really luxurious, much more spectacular than my palace. The enlightenment tree should be inside too. The boy couldn't help but sigh, with a greedy light flashing in his eyes. But the boy's tone changed subtly, and his eyes rolled around. The lord of the great Qin is not easy to mess with. We must find a very safe way to get in, otherwise if he finds out, it will be troublesome. What should I do? The boy's eyes rolled around a few times, and his eyes were charming and seductive. At this time, the conversations of several people next to him caught his attention. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 186. Have you heard that His Majesty has not been attending court recently? Your Majesty has captured so many fairies and saints, and he hasn't had enough fun yet. How could he go to court? Alas, I thought His Majesty had begun to change, but I didn't expect that he seemed to be still the same as before, and began to become stupid. Who said it wasn't? This time, His Majesty has provoked so many top forces, I'm afraid it will bring great disasters to my great Qin again. Do you think His Majesty was tempted by the beauty of those fairies, so in order to satisfy his lust, he chose to kill the saints of those forces? Don't say it, it's really possible. After all, His Majesty has been lustful for a long time. How can he control himself when he sees a young and beautiful fairy? Shh, be careful. These people talked a lot, and their words were filled with strong concerns. The young man raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, and his mind moved, listening carefully. Lustful. I'm tempted by beauty. I can't control myself when I see those pretty girls. The young man smiled and nodded secretly. It turns out that he is a lustful and incompetent emperor. That's easy to deal with. He was just worrying about how to get into the palace. Now he has a way. But the emperor is not as simple as he seems. I need an identity without flaws, and I can't take the initiative to deliver it to him. The young man muttered to himself, with a faint light in his eyes. He took a deep look at the palace, then turned and left. As he passed by, the streets were bustling with people, noisy, and there was a scene of singing and dancing. Suddenly, he stopped abruptly. The street in front of him was completely different from other long streets. The two sides of the street were full of red lanterns, and there were only male monks coming and going, and there was almost no trace of female monks. But in front of each building, there were several women standing in revealing and gorgeous clothes. These women, half-dressed, with their snow-white skin exposed, were very charming and seductive. At this time, they held handkerchiefs in their hands, swaying their bodies and flirting with many male monks. Even he couldn't bear to look at that lewd look, and felt inferior. It seems that this is the brothel in the human city. The young man tilted his head and looked around, muttering. Well, I was worried about how to get into the palace, maybe this is a good identity. He looked carefully. He found that in front of him, a brothel was particularly popular, and the door was surrounded by people. Moreover, the scale and decoration of this brothel were extremely gorgeous, with carved railings and jade bricks, exquisite and exquisite. People felt that it was extremely luxurious and priceless at a glance. There were also many graceful female monks welcoming guests at the door, each of them was disheveled and charming. The young man looked closely. He saw 3 powerful and vigorous characters written on the plaque in front of the door. Zwixian Pavilion. Zwixian Pavilion? Oh, what a big tone, this is it. He sneered in his heart. Then, he walked forward and headed straight for the brothel. Young master, you are finally here. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Please come in and let me serve you. As soon as the boy walked to the door, several gorgeous pink-dressed women swarmed forward and scrambled to pull him. The soft and plump body pressed against his body, and the fragrance wafted, making people intoxicated. Get out. The boy frowned slightly and raised his hand to push them away. Young master. Are you shy? He. Young master, don't be shy, we won't eat you. The women laughed continuously, but still pestered the boy, not at all because of the boy's rude behavior. Instead, they became more attentive and kept getting close to him. There were even a few women in coquettish and disheveled clothes who rushed over, hugged his waist and kissed his cheek. After all, they usually received rough men with big bodies, and it was rare to see such a delicate and tender young man. And it was even more rare to meet a handsome boy like this one. If you could get him to sleep with you for one night, you would make a profit even if you had to pay for it. Who is the person in charge here? I want to find him. The boy pushed everyone away and glanced at them lightly. He had no interest in these rouge and powder worldly rich people, and he had no time to waste with these women here. The key was to get his identity as soon as possible. Oh, young master is so handsome, and I am the madam here. At this moment, a woman with a slender figure, a beautiful face, and still charming came over and bowed. If you are willing, how about I accompany you to drink a glass of wine? Her face was full of a warm smile like spring breeze and rain, and her eyes were even more charming. Are you the person in charge of this brothel? The young man raised his eyebrows and asked calmly. Sir, what do you want to see me for? Do you want to have fun? I play the pipa very well. The beautiful woman smiled lightly, stroking her temples, and her breath was as fragrant as orchid. Although she didn't know the handsome boy in front of her, she could tell from the clothes he wore that he was extraordinary. She liked to communicate with such pure boys the most. I'm not looking for fun, but to ask you to do something important. The boy shook his head slightly. Important things? The beautiful woman was slightly stunned. The boy nodded. Let's go to another place to talk alone. Okay. The beautiful woman hesitated for a moment, then responded and led the boy to the back hall. Along the way, I don't know how many girls cast curious eyes. Crossing dozens of steps, the corridors are winding, and the pavilions and waterside pavilions are scattered. Until the last place, they entered a quiet and elegant courtyard. Creaking. The door was pushed open, and the furnishings in the house were quite simple, but clean and tidy, and it was obvious that someone lived there often. Sir, please sit down. The beautiful woman placed the teacup in front of the boy with her slender fingertips and said with a chuckle. The boy took a sip of the teacup. The tea was clear and sweet, with a refreshing fragrance that made people feel relaxed and happy. Not bad. He nodded and praised the beautiful woman's service. The beautiful woman smiled and said, This is called Xuanhuan, which is the highest grade tea in Xianlu. It is not only delicious, but also nourishes the face and prolongs life. The young man put down the teacup and asked lightly, What's your name? My name is Li Hongling. The beautiful woman smiled and replied. After a pause, she asked again, I wonder if the young master has any important things to discuss with me. Do you still accept people here? The young man asked casually with his arms around his chest. Ah, of course I did. The beautiful woman was slightly startled, then she chuckled, her eyes sparkling with a strange light. Could it be that you want to? It's not impossible. With your looks, even if you are a man, you will definitely be liked by many men. The young man's face was dark, and then a strange halo suddenly bloomed in his eyes, and his voice was full of temptation and seduction. Look into my eyes. Warm tea. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 187. The beautiful woman was slightly startled, and subconsciously looked into the boy's eyes. For a moment, as if she was swallowed by the abyss, her eyes were dull, as if even her soul was sucked in, and she was completely trapped in it. After a long time, the beautiful woman regained her composure, looked extremely respectful, and knelt deeply on the ground. My slave greets the master. At this time, the boy was no longer a boy, but was wearing a purple long skirt, with a face like peach blossoms, bright and beautiful. In a trance, there were 9 pink and white foxtails floating and turning behind her, shadowy, gushing and swaying with bursts of fragrance. She sat quietly on the chair, her black hair scattered on the sides of her shoulders, and the breeze blew over, lifting the strands of hair that fell on her chest, revealing the exquisite and perfect clavicle and jade skin on her neck. Such a peerless face, even the sky, the earth, the sun, and the moon are eclipsed, but unfortunately, at this moment, except for the beautiful woman who had lost her mind in front of her, no one else could appreciate it. Not only that, her temperament changed, the original purity disappeared, replaced by the natural charm. It's still comfortable to use it myself, finally I don't have to pretend to be a stinky man. She breathed a sigh of relief, showing a charming smile, her red lips were as bright as blood, full of charming and dangerous charm. She stretched out her hand to brush the bangs in front of her forehead, with a smile on her lips. My current identity is the courtesan of Xianlu. I sell art but not my body. Within 3 days, I want all the admirers in Chang'an City to be my admirers. Can you do it? Her figure slowly stood in the air, and a strong pressure enveloped her, making Li Hongling tremble all over, and she dared not disobey at all. I understand. Li Hongling lowered her head. Yes. Sumaier nodded. In addition, I need a few sets of exclusive clothes, you prepare them for me. I obey. Li Hongling bowed. By the way, I'm still short of 2 maids. Let them go to the street to buy delicious food for me every day. Don't slack off for a day. Sumaier suddenly remembered something. I understand. Li Hongling responded respectfully. Well, go ahead. Sumaier waved her hand gently, and Li Hongling immediately retreated. After she left, Sumaier slowly sat on the chair, elegantly crossed her legs, and one of her pink jade feet was exposed to the air, white and delicate, as if carved from mutton fat white jade. There was also a string of bronze bells hanging at her ankles, jingling, very pleasant, and adding a bit of enchanting charm. Sumaier looked out the window, the moonlight shone in from the window, and her delicate body was set off by a dazzling silver-white color, as if she was in the clouds, ethereal and illusory, and it was difficult to tell the truth from the false. Her face was also stained with a faint silver light, which made her look more holy and beautiful, but under the holiness was a fascinating feeling. The combination of the two produced an extremely strange contradiction and conflict, but it was wonderfully harmonious and just right, giving people an amazing visual impact. Sumaier. Sumaier lay lazily on the chair, playing with the jade pendant hanging from her waist, with a slight smile on her lips. Qin Mu, right, I want to see how interesting this game will be. The next day, the morning light was dim. The sun was rising, casting thousands of rays of light, shining on the entire palace, and the magnificent buildings were shining like a fairyland. The morning court was approaching. The ministers arrived at the Golden Palace one after another, lined up according to their ranks, waiting to attend the court. But after waiting for a long time, they still didn't hear any communication. Obviously, Qin Mu still had no intention of attending the court today. Many ministers exchanged glances with each other, and they saw helplessness in each other's eyes. It seems that His Majesty will not come to the court today. Someone sighed, with a sad tone. Stupid monarch, Your Majesty has become that stupid monarch again. Alas! I heard that the major forces in the Apocalypse domain and the Wind Spirit domain have already received the news that their own saints have fallen in Dakin, and they are preparing to discuss how to attack Dakin. But at this time, Your Majesty still ignores it. What should we do? Even if our Dakin is strong, it can't be the opponent of the alliance between the Apocalypse domain and the Wind Spirit domain. Forget it, let's send an envoy to negotiate as soon as possible. But Your Majesty hasn't issued an order yet, and we can only make decisions on our own. Stupid, really stupid. The ministers were worried, and there was a cloud of sorrow. They are very melancholy now. Before, His Majesty would discuss with them before making any decision. Although their words didn't work in the end, at least they could know in advance. But now when His Majesty made such a ridiculous move, he didn't even discuss with them. This is simply a mess. If that's the case, what's the point of having ministers like them? Wouldn't it be better to just resign and retire? They were extremely depressed, and some even couldn't help secretly cursing Qin as an absolute tyrant. Ahem. At this moment, an old man coughed suddenly, which immediately attracted the attention of all the ministers. Following the sound, they found that it was Du Yulin, the national teacher of the Great Qin. Du Yulin said softly, "Everyone, please be patient, I believe your Majesty will definitely find a solution." However, these words obviously did not ease the worries of the ministers. At this time, a young official's eyes lit up, and he stood up and said, "Master Xuanhuan, why don't you carry the coffin to the court again, maybe His Majesty will come out." As soon as this proposal came out, it was immediately recognized by other ministers. They all bowed and said, "For the sake of Dakin, please help again, Master Xuanhuan. Du Yulin. He has carried it 3 times, and he really can't carry it anymore." P.S. 4 updates today, and 1 more update later. Brothers, there are only a few hundred followers away from 20,000 fans. If you haven't followed, follow me and help the young author realize his dream of 20,000 fans. After 20,000 fans, there will be more updates. PS2, the skirt is gone again. Let me count. This should be the 8th one. It's sad. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 188. The sun was at its highest point. Vyang Palace. Qin was lying on the dragon couch, with 2 soft and plump bodies lying on his left and right, their hair disheveled, their clothes half removed, revealing a large area of spring. They were all extremely beautiful women, with peerless looks, graceful figures, and curvaceous curves. At this time, both women closed their eyes, breathing steadily and long, sleeping very sweetly, obviously looking overworked. At this time, Qin suddenly heard a system sound in his mind. It was detected that the host disregarded the safety of the Qin dynasty and wantonly killed the saints of other top forces, causing the wrath of heaven and the resentment of the people. This is the ultimate stupidity. Obtain stupidity reward, 3 Emperor Cultivation Experience cards. It was detected that the host had not attended court for many days, and obtained stupidity reward, real dragon armor. It was detected that the host disappointed the civil and military ministers again, and obtained stupidity reward, Pangu Essence Blood. It is detected that the host has forced the imperial master to carry the coffin to the court many times, and has obtained the reward of being incompetent, Pure Lotus Demon Fire. A series of system prompts finally woke Qin up from his sleep and opened his eyes. What he saw was a pair of snow-white arms like lotus roots resting on his chest. Qin skillfully opened the pair of jade arms and turned over. The woman beside him seemed to feel his movements, her eyelashes trembled, and she slowly woke up. 2 beautiful faces appeared in his eyes at the same time, one was cold and arrogant, the other was delicate and moving, both of them were rare beauties in the world. Awake. Qin smiled, reached out and touched Ji Hongai's cheek, which was warm and smooth, like silk. Ji Hongai frowned slightly, and there was a trace of pain in her expression. She looked at Qin with shyness and anger. Qin smiled and didn't care about her look. Instead, he kindly tidied up the messy hair on her forehead. Xie Hongai was slightly stunned. She was suddenly at a loss for what to do with Qin gentle gesture. The shame and anger in her eyes faded like a tide, and a strange feeling emerged in her heart. She stared at the face close at hand in a daze, her heart filled with complexity and confusion. What's wrong with you? Xie Hongai hesitated. What's wrong, my noble queen, Qin Mu gently pinched her nose and chuckled. Hearing this, Xuanhuan's face flushed instantly and she lowered her head. Now when she heard the four words Her Majesty, she couldn't help but think of some pictures. Xuanhuan never thought that the four words Her Majesty would one day become a condiment for that kind of thing. It's really too outrageous. Especially at the end, Xuanhuan, the little slut, ran over from nowhere and insisted on joining in. What else can you say about three people walking together? There must be one person who can teach me. It's a mess, it's inexplicable. Xuanhuan's cheeks were burning, and she wished she could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. But Qin Mu didn't notice the awkward atmosphere at all, and continued, I say, should we get up and get dressed? Xuanhuan was startled when she heard the words, and suddenly reacted, and her pretty face was instantly full of rosy clouds. She immediately sat up and quickly picked up the dress scattered on the bed. But when she picked up the dress, her face became more and more red, and she was so shy. Because this dress has long been in a mess, and only half of the sleeves are left. The other half was completely thrown on the floor, and it couldn't cover anything at all. Xuanhuan glanced at Xuanhuan, who was also blushing beside her, and glared at her fiercely. It's all this little slut's fault. She secretly glanced at Qin Mu beside her again, and saw that Qin Mu was staring at her. She couldn't help but panic in her heart and quickly turned her back. Don't look at it. Xuanhuan picked up the remaining clothes and put them on in a hurry, but it was still difficult to hide her exquisite and curvy figure. Qin Mu glanced at her lightly, with a smile on his lips. He grabbed a piece of clothes and put them on, and got off the bed. Xuanhuan saw this, regardless of her own exposure, hurriedly got up and helped Qin Mu put on shoes and socks. Your Majesty, I will help you put them on, she said with a chuckle, and gently stroked Qin Mu's calf with her slender hands. Okay. Qin Mu nodded slightly and let her do it. The intimacy of the two made Xuanhuan's eyes dim and sighed in her heart. However, he still pretended to be calm on the surface, turned his head away with disdain, and snorted. Lecher. Qin Mu shrugged and smiled without saying anything. He walked to the table and sat down, poured a cup of tea and took a sip, and then began to check the system rewards. Undoubtedly, the most awesome one is the Great Emperor Cultivation Experience card. Great Emperor Cultivation Experience card, after using it, you can instantly have the peak cultivation of the Great Emperor, duration, 3 hours. Note, if you have enough comprehension, you can use this card to comprehend the Emperor level skills, Emperor level combat skills, Emperor level secrets, etc. After reading the introduction, Qin Mu's eyes lit up slightly. The effect of the Great Emperor Cultivation Experience card is really amazing. Not only can you experience the Great Emperor's cultivation, but you can also use it to comprehend the skills and combat skills that can only be comprehended by the Great Emperor. This is simply cheating. With this card, Qin Mu can really despise the world. The only flaw is that there are only 3 of them. However, Qin Mu did not care too much about it. Anyway, according to his progress in cultivation, it would only take a short time for the Emperor Mirror to be within his reach. True Dragon Armor, a very cool armor. When you put it on, you will be the coolest Emperor. Note, after putting on the armor, your defense will reach an extremely terrifying level, and your strength and all aspects will be greatly improved and amplified, with no upper limit. After reading the properties of the True Dragon Armor, Qin Mu was quite surprised that such a thing actually existed. Qin Mu cast his eyes on the True Dragon Armor, and saw that it was golden all over, as if it was flowing with liquid gold, dazzling, majestic and heavy. On the right shoulder of the armor, there was a lifelike golden dragon engraved, as if it had come alive, with its body winding and circling, lifelike. In addition, every part of the True Dragon Armor was carved with complicated and mysterious symbols and patterns, which looked particularly magical. Qin Mu's mind moved, and the true dragon armor turned into a ray of golden light and rushed into his sea of consciousness. In an instant, a violent and domineering dragon power burst out from Qin Mu's body, and dragon-shaped patterns appeared faintly on the surface of his skin, with overwhelming pressure. Xuanhuan was startled and took a few steps back. What happened?" Xuanhuan said worriedly. Just at that moment, she seemed to see a ferocious and domineering wild dragon in Qin Mu's body, which was extremely ferocious and gave people a feeling of extreme danger, as if the slightest mistake would be doomed. "It's okay," Qin Mu shook his head and said. Having said that, Qin Mu still suppressed a hint of excitement in his eyes. This set of real dragon armor can actually resonate with the real dragon blood in his body. You know, he has the real dragon blood of Long Xiaoxiao in his body. Now after the fusion of the real dragon armor, the real dragon blood is boiling. Qin Mu even felt that as long as he worked a little harder, he could transform the real dragon blood in his body. By then, his strength will inevitably usher in a qualitative change. Qin Mu restrained his momentum and glanced at Li Hongyi and Yun Yan'er. He ignored them. He continued to look at the next reward. Pangu's blood. Qin Mu's eyes were a little strange. After so many years, Pangu hasn't been drained yet? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 189. Looking at the drop of golden blood, Qin Mu couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Pangu is definitely the most miserable person in the world. For so many years, I don't know how much blood and essence he has been drained, but now he still has some left. Qin Mu shook his head, and felt sorry for Pangu for 3 seconds. Then he chose to accept this drop of Pangu's blood without hesitation. Boom! Qin Mu's whole body shook, and he immediately felt a majestic force surging from the depths of his dantian, instantly spreading throughout his body. This force was extremely powerful and surging, filling his muscles, veins, blood and flesh, and seemed to break out of his body at any time and burst him. Refine. Qin Mu's eyes flashed, and he circulated his skills to frantically absorb these powers, tempering and strengthening himself. As Qin Mu circulated his skills, the energy that was originally overflowing in his body was suddenly guided to gather at the dantian. Passing through all parts of his body along the way, it finally exploded at the dantian and turned into a torrent. An amazing heat emanated from his body. At the same time, the temperature in the room suddenly rose, as if they were in a furnace. Xuanhuan and Yun Yan'er both changed their expressions and took a few steps back. Yun Yan'er was fine. She had seen this situation many times and was no longer surprised. But Xuanhuan was different. It was the first time she saw such a terrible scene, and she was stunned. Qin Mu's temperature was getting higher and higher. Gradually, golden light emanated from his body, as if a god had descended to the world, giving people an unprecedented sense of suffocation. Is this a breakthrough? Xuanhuan opened her eyes wide and showed a look of horror. The energy fluctuations transmitted from Qin Mu were very strong, making it difficult for her to breathe. She even had an urge to kneel down. Unlike the kneeling down last night, she was willing to kneel down now. This was awe of the strong. This urge to surrender was very fierce and caught people off guard. Xuanhuan gritted her teeth and held on, staring at Qin Mu. She wanted to see clearly whether this man could break through successfully. Or in other words, how powerful he was. Qin Mu was completely unaware of the two women's reactions at this time. His cultivation level was rising step by step, making rapid progress. In just a few breaths, his cultivation level soared from the 6th level of Yuanshen realm to the 8th level of Yuanshen realm, and did not stop, continuing to climb up. In the blink of an eye, Qin Mu's cultivation level broke through to the first level of Dongxu realm. The bottleneck between Yuanshen realm and Dongxu realm was like paper in front of this majestic and surging power. It was easily pierced, and it drove straight in, unstoppable. Followed by the second level of Dongxu realm, the third level of Dongxu realm, and the fourth level of Dongxu realm. When Qin Mu's cultivation level broke through to the fifth level of Dongxu realm, the power emanating from him gradually subsided. However, Qin Mu still did not intend to stop. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he continued to activate the true dragon bloodline and true phoenix bloodline in his body, madly absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and condensing spiritual power. Boom! A true dragon Dharma image and a true phoenix Dharma image appeared behind Qin Mu, intertwined and protected each other, like two ancient gods in the world, exuding a terrible aura, causing the space to tremble slightly. One could even vaguely hear the sound of dragon roars and phoenix cries resounding through the nine heavens, shocking the mind. The auspicious light enveloped Qin Mu, making his aura more ethereal, as if he had transcended the mundane world and ascended to the immortal throne. The entire palace was shrouded in a faint glow. True dragon bloodline and true phoenix bloodline. How is this possible? What is his origin? Ji Hongai's eyes widened, and a huge wave of shock rose in her heart. She had never thought that a human could have both true dragon bloodline and true phoenix bloodline at the same time. You should know that the dragon clan and the phoenix clan are both powerful monsters that have existed since ancient times. They are naturally arrogant, noble, and supreme. Even if they only rely on any one of their bloodlines, they are enough to dominate the heavens and the world. However, now, a human actually possesses two terrifying bloodlines that are comparable to the emperor-level bloodlines at the same time. This is too incredible. Who are you? Xie Hong'ai murmured to himself, with a very complicated look. Everyone knows that the real dragon and the real phoenix are mortal enemies. According to historical records, the two clans had launched wars many times during the ancient times, and once the world collapsed and fell apart. There are even rumors that the world is now divided into 42 domains because of the Dragon and Phoenix War. This also leads to the fact that the real Dragon bloodline and the real Phoenix bloodline are two completely opposite bloodlines, and it is impossible to merge together. This is the consensus of the world. But the man in front of him broke this consensus. Once the news leaks out, the entire human race's 9 domains and even the other 33 continents will inevitably set off a huge uproar, and countless top powerhouses will flock to it. What a terrible aura! Xie Hong'ai murmured. These two auras are so terrible that they make her head buzz, and she can no longer bear such terrible pressure. Yun Yan'er was also shocked to the extreme, her mouth slightly opened, and she couldn't speak for a long time. Under the influence of these two bloodline powers, Qin Mu's cultivation continued to increase, from the 5th level of the Cave Void Realm to the peak of the 9th level of the Cave Void Realm, and he was only one step away from the Dao Zhan realm. And this step is also the most difficult step to cross. Many cultivators are stuck here for thousands of years and cannot break through, and finally die with hatred. But for Qin Mu, taking this step is a common thing. His soul realm has long been helped by Pangu's blood essence, and he has a transcendent understanding of the rules of heaven and earth. His comprehension of the Dao-slaying realm is even more extreme, and he can understand it with one thought. What he lacks is just a lot of spiritual power. Just like upgrading a game, as long as there are enough gold coins and experience, upgrading is as simple as eating and drinking. And Qin Mu already has enough experience at this time. The breath emanating from Qin Mu is getting bigger and bigger, as if it is eternal and immortal. Finally, after a quarter of an hour, his breath is completely stable, and he successfully advances to the Dao-slaying realm. Hu! Qin Mu breathed a sigh of relief and slowly opened his eyes. He clenched his fist, and the bones in his body crackled. A strong force gathered in his palm, as if he could break the sky with just a slight swing of his fist. At this moment, the true dragon Dharma image and the true phoenix Dharma image were all reduced to the size of rice grains, drilled into his blood, and disappeared. Today, Qin Mu's combat power has been completely improved by several times. Even if he encounters a powerful person in the Saint realm, Qin Mu can suppress him or even kill him with conventional means. Congratulations, Your Majesty, on your great increase in strength. Xuanhuan immediately ran over and flattered him with a smile, her cheeks flushed with shame. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 190. Qin Mu nodded slightly. Xuanhuan blinked and asked curiously, Your Majesty, what state are you in now? She only knew that His Majesty's pressure was getting stronger and stronger, and his aura was getting deeper and deeper, but she didn't know exactly what state he was in, because her current cultivation level was only that of Shenzang, and she couldn't see through Qin Mu's cultivation level at all. Of course, this actually has nothing to do with the level of cultivation, because even if Tianjiza comes, he can't see through Qin Mu's cultivation. Second level of killing, Qin Mu said lightly with a smile on his face. Xuanhuan's eyes suddenly widened, with a look of astonishment on her pretty face. She knew that Her Majesty was a monster. However, she never expected that His Majesty would reach the Dao-slaying realm in such a short period of time. Xuanhuan pursed her red lips slightly, not daring to leave the passage. Really, really? Your Majesty, have you really reached the Dao-killing realm? Qin Mu smiled lightly and said, Have I ever lied to you? Xuanhuan couldn't help but swallow her throat slightly when she heard the words. She didn't know what to say, she just felt like a dream. Because she clearly remembered that His Majesty's cultivation had just entered the Yuanshen realm a few days ago. And just a few days later, His Majesty suddenly became a powerful man in the Dao-slaying realm. Simply incredible. This kind of speed, looking at the entire 42 continents, may be unprecedented and unprecedented. Xuanhuan's eyes also widened, her pretty face was extremely pale, and her eyes were full of shock. Is this the Dao-killing realm? Xuanhuan murmured to herself, her heart trembling slightly. Just standing in front of Qin Mu, she couldn't help but have the urge to surrender and kneel down. I actually saw him advance to the Dao-slaying realm. Xuanhuan spoke with difficulty, his eyes filled with disbelief. Until now, she couldn't believe it. She even suspected that she hadn't woken up yet. A guy who just broke through to the cave void realm actually broke through to the Dao-killing realm in an instant? Are the bottlenecks between these realms useless to him? Xuanhuan thought of the scene when she broke through the Dongxu realm. It was a hardship. After half a month of preparation, I finally broke through to the cave realm. Moreover, in the process of her breakthrough, it can be said that there are many crises and dangers, and she is on the edge of death every minute and second. There were even several times when she thought that she might never be able to step into the cave realm again in her life. But the man in front of him is good. He closed his eyes and practiced a few times, and successfully advanced to the Dao-slaying realm. It doesn't even take half a day. The difference is too big. This made Xuanhuan's heart twitch hard for a few times. It was difficult to accept this fact and she felt like she had been hit hard. But when she thought that Qin Mu had the blood of a true dragon and a true phoenix, Xuanhuan suddenly felt that it wasn't too outrageous. At this time, Qin Mu looked at Xuanhuan and said with a smile. Her Majesty the Queen seemed very disappointed when she saw that I did not stay in the cave realm. Xuanhuan's delicate body trembled violently, and she quickly waved her hands to deny it. How is it possible? How could I be disappointed? If you're not disappointed, why does your face look so weird? Could it be? Qin Mu approached with a smile on his face. No, I just... Qin Mu's voice gradually approached, Xuanhuan's face turned red, and she was panicking. She was about to run away, but unfortunately Qin Mu grabbed her arm. Ji Hong I couldn't help but exclaimed, her pretty face turned red. At this time, Qin Mu came close to her ear, and his warm breath sprayed on the earlobe, with a slight tingling effect, which made Xie Hong I's whole body feel weak and almost collapsed. Only you will stay in the Dongxu realm. After all, you are the real Dongxu. Qin Mu made a pun, chuckled and teased, his eyes slowly moving downwards. Xie Hong I was stunned for a moment, but then she realized what she was doing. Her pretty face turned as red as fire, and she said coquettishly, you bastard. Her ears instantly became hot, her heartbeat suddenly accelerated, her breathing became rapid, and her chest rose and fell violently, showing her agitated emotions. Qin Mu smiled and shook his head, but did not continue teasing her. His eyes fell on the last reward on the system panel, Pure Lotus Demon Fire. He saw a white lotus floating quietly in his mind, surrounded by blazing holy fire. Pure Lotus Demon Fire, rumor has it that it is a holy fire descended from heaven, containing infinite power. It has the power to burn out all demons and monsters in the world, and it can also burn out all the sources of filth and evil spirits in the world. It can even be induced by the emotions of living beings in the world to enter their bodies, burning everything, extremely powerful. After reading this information, Qin Mu's eyes became brighter and brighter. He stretched out his hand, and the white lotus slowly flew over and landed in the palm of his hand, burning quietly with a blazing light blue flame. Qin Mu observed carefully. The color of this lotus flower is milky white, without any flaws. It is as if it is made of mutton fat jade. It is crystal clear and exudes a burst of fragrance. The smell of it makes people feel refreshed, as if they have taken some magic medicine. This is an extremely special flame. Qin Mu can feel that it contains very terrifying power. If it blooms in full, it will definitely destroy the world. Not bad. Qin Mu raised the corner of his mouth slightly. The Pure Lotus demonic fire is indeed extraordinary, and it can be regarded as a top treasure even in the fantasy world. Such a flame is an extremely desired treasure for any practitioner. Especially for those cultivators who are proficient in alchemy, it is a treasure they dream of. Qin Mu believes that this Pure Lotus demon fire should be quite useful in dealing with evil spirits. With the Pure Lotus demon fire protecting his body, his safety is more guaranteed. Your Majesty. At this time, Xie Hong I called softly. Qin Mu turned his head, but found that Xie Hong I had already walked in front of him. Although her face was flushed, she still mustered up the courage to raise her little face. She looked at Qin Mu with a firm gaze and asked, Your Majesty, does your promise last night still count? Xie Hong I's voice was soft and boneless, as if there was a magic power. At this time, Xie Hong I's face was slightly flushed, and with that charming expression, she was full of charm. If it were usual, she would never make such a gesture, but Qin Mu's promise last night was related to the future of the entire Kanyu dynasty, so she had to take it seriously. Qin Mu promised that as long as she was willing to assist Dakin and become his concubine, he could ensure the eternal prosperity of Kanyu, and they would rise and fall together. Hearing Ji Hong I's words, Qin Mu was stunned, and then smiled. Your Majesty means. Your Majesty, please stop teasing Hong I. Ji Hong I pursed her red lips and slowly lowered her head. Her voice became weaker and weaker, and it was almost inaudible in the end. That different and contrasting delicate gesture made Qin Mu's heart beat at this time. Qin Mu nodded, and smiled playfully, I will not regret what I promised you. Thank you, Your Majesty. After hearing the affirmative answer, Ji Hong I was happy and a bright smile suddenly bloomed on her face. However, at this time, Qin Mu suddenly changed his tone, but it depends on how you perform in the future. Hearing this, Ji Hong I's cheeks became even redder. Tonight, Your Majesty, are you willing to accompany Hong I? She bit her teeth, lowered her head shyly, and spoke in a low voice. but then, her eyes flickered slightly, she bit her lips lightly, and said shyly, "Go to Wuxian together. Warm ti."